feedback about the event, some of your comments, so that way the people behind the scene that brought this workshop forward learns from your comments and works on something better next time, inshallah. So if I can have everybody, if I could get, where's Khalid? He's out there talking. If I can get them to get the brothers to come in, please. And the sisters, if I can get the sisters to have a seat. I think we're still missing a lot of the brothers. But we shall begin. Thank you for coming back. And this topic now, this hour, we're going to be talking about courtship and the manners of courtship and the ways of courtship and what is the religious halal way of courting, to what depth the relationship can be, and we're going to get it from both a religious perspective and I hate to say that it's kind of on the opposite side, but a realistic approach to an Islamic date, because it can be very technical in the religious aspect, and sometimes because we live in a society that is not conducive to such an environment, it becomes very challenging for our youth in approaching somebody that's going to be a significant person in their life. So with that, I'd like to begin first with Said and talking about what is, yes, this is the survey that they're going to be passing out, correct? Okay, and just, okay, thank you very much. So what is the proper way, the halal way of getting to know somebody from an Islamic perspective, and not only from an Islamic perspective, but what you see on a daily basis, say, because you get many calls, many sometimes youth, they come in and they approach you about this. How do I go about getting to know a sister or a brother?
If you search the entire Islamic texts, whether the Quran, the Holy Quran, or the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you would never come across a term called halal dating, because dating never existed. In the traditional societies, back at that time, they didn't have dating. They would ask about the person, and today they get engaged, in the evening they are married. Sometimes they don't see each other. But as I said, God gave them the ability to compromise and to work out their differences. And they had little, very small, negligible rate of divorce at that time. Nowadays, dating is necessary, because you can't marry someone that you don't know well. And the only way to know that person is dating. Now, this dating takes different types and shapes and methods and approaches. Some of them are unacceptable in religion, because they get the result of the dating, not the dating itself. The result of it is going to go into the wrong direction, which is going to be catastrophic for both sides, for the female and the male, but mostly the female is going to pay a higher price for that. So you have to, it depends on your intention of this dating. What is your intention? It's a serious marriage, or you want to fool around? This is number one. And number two, the approach. Islam says you may get to know the other side, go to her house, go to his house, meet the parents, sit together, speak. Even if you can sit in one room, in a cafe, in a restaurant, in a room, but there is someone around in the house, not just you by yourself, someone around. In the kitchen there is a lady, upstairs there is someone. This is acceptable. But beyond that, if you are not sure of yourself and your intentions, because sometimes we begin with a good intention, but we end up doing the wrong thing. Okay? So you have to be mature and responsible. If you want to date, Islam does not say you need a supervisor watching over you because you don't feel comfortable. You don't feel. The idea of dating is to get to know the other side without intimidations, without outside pressure. So you may go out when they ask me, can we go to a restaurant? Yes, you can go. Are you responsible? Responsible being, is she responsible? If you think you're responsible, then you may go to a restaurant, to a cafe, you know. I don't go to I stop short of telling them, and this happened just recently when someone told me that he asked me to stay in his property for 3 days. I said to her, this is not a good idea. She said, he's very religious. I said, I know the person. He is very religious. But staying in his property for 3 days, it is going to cheapen your value. One day he's going to use this against you. He's going to say, see, in the beginning, you were ready to come and stay. Before you became my wife, before we got engaged, you stayed in my house for 3 days, even if they were not in the same room. So try to avoid these sensitive issues and areas that are going to backfire in the future. You may get to know them, you know, take your time. Nowadays, we have even better than meeting outside, you know, we have these things, you know, that you are attached to them 24 hours a day. We send movies, we send pictures, we send poetries, you know, we exchange things. So, to a level that is acceptable. Islam says, if it is acceptable, I'm okay with it. Don't jeopardize your life and the life of others. Don't take advantage of them. It's acceptable. It's halal. This is the meaning of halal. Halal as long as you don't hurt yourself or others.
From the professionals.
Okay. Is this working? What was the question again?
Well, the question is, what's the proper way of, Said had talked about from a religious perspective.
Use that.
Okay.
But from your experience in working with family, working with the youths and so forth, how do you see their approach, their ways of dating?
Very conflicted. I'm talking about Muslim young youth, especially Muslim young ladies, conflicted because their understanding of the religion is you cannot date, but then the question they ask me then is, how would I know my partner if I do not take time, spend time with him? And here you are asking me the best way, the best predictor of a good marriage is friendship. If you have a good friendship with your partner, that's the best predictor. But then how can I know him if my religion does not permit me to? So that, to your answer, how do you see it? Very conflictual. And my role is to navigate that and to balance between the religion, and I'm not an expert in that. But on the psychological part of it is by saying what the Sheikh said, is being able to know the person without crossing the line where it goes from halal to haram.
Maryam?
Alright. So can I first just say, like, may Allah reward everyone here that's trying to approach this in an Islamic way, because if you guys have grown up here like myself, it's very, very, very difficult to not date the American way. Alright, and when I mean American, I mean getting physically involved and everything that leads up to that. So may Allah reward you guys, seriously. So what I've seen couples do in terms of getting to know each other, so as Said was saying, like, you have a third party if you're going out, maybe groups, right? That could be like the initial way of meeting people. So I think this is like the main really issue of marriage, is to find the person. And where am I supposed to find this person, right? So this is the crisis that we are dealing with. So the ways that I've seen people do it and that have been effective are, okay, you have family, right? But we're not back home where people can meet seriously, like in your city, and families know people, they can just, we're not there. We're in the United States where people are separated hundreds of miles away, right? So you have the friends, you have the colleagues, you have your non-Muslim friends. They know Muslim people too, so you guys can reach out to your non-Muslim friends, co-workers, classmates, MSAs, any kind of organization you guys are involved with. And then someone brought up online. All right, so 1 out of 5 relationships start online. That's the most recent statistic. And there's a lot of actually Islamic, dating sites, if you want to call it that. I've had couples come in where they actually have met through the websites and they're getting married. So it's working. I mean, not for everybody. I know it's not for everybody. So if you're comfortable with that, going on there and finding people that way, yeah.
Can I add something?
Mm-hmm.
I think dating has to go through phases. Phase 1 is what Sister Maryam rightly mentioned, is the online. First, of course, a setting like this. This is the ideal setting for dating. For the first glance, it's here. Introduction. Then if you both think that there is some room for progress, you can get involved online. Then you have to tell your parents. I strongly suggest, inform your parents about this before you go and physically meet the opposite gender. Inform your parents, both sides. If your parents are okay with it, then you can go out, or they can come to your house. You can go to their house, you can go to a restaurant, you can meet in a cafe, at the school, somewhere. Then after that, of course, if there is evolvement and things are heading into the right direction, because you're going to know people through moments of anger, frustration, impatience. If, let's say, some people, they spoil it from the first meeting because he arrives 2 hours late, and then that this guy or she, you cannot, depend on him or her. So forget about it. So through these meetings, you're going to know, the good sides and the bad sides of the people. And then if they head into the right direction, then engagement after that, my opinion.
I believe, in my opinion, it's very important to the Muslim community, especially the masajids and other formats like this, to nurture and educate our youth, to tell them, like what we're told right now, what's halal and what's permissible, and not only to the youth, but also educate the parents, because once there's an understanding, and what the understanding does implicitly is give permission, so the kid is not going to be conflicted and saying, well, am I supposed to do this? If not, then I'm going to disappoint. So when they get the understanding, they get the permission, and then after that, when there is an opportunity to meet like this, then there will be more in this kind of venue rather than in our counseling rooms where we have to work the issues and lose patience at the same time.
Can I say, if you guys see someone that you're interested in, say it's here. You could be like that middle person, like, hey, I saw this sister, but I don't know her name, and I don't know who she is. Can you maybe get some information? Oh, I saw this brother. I don't really know him. I came to the mosque today, and my first time at this mosque. I don't know him. I mean, you can have a middle person. You can have a person in the middle. It could be a friend that can just go up to the other person. I mean, I could be that person for you guys, seriously. I've told my friends that I'll be that person, that initiator. Because seriously, at least I can even tell you a personal story. One of my really good friends, we went to college together, and she was interested in this brother that we knew, and she didn't have the courage to go up to him or talk to him. So I did it on her behalf, right? So I emailed him. I did it the email way. You can do whatever way you want. I mean, whatever you're comfortable with. And I was that third party until the point where they were comfortable, with kind of letting me go. And it was them suing the families, if that makes sense.
Maryam, the third party with limited responsibilities. Because the repercussions are going to be there.
No, just the
I think just to introduce and tell them, listen, my job is just to introduce you.
Yeah.
No more than that. You do your own homework.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Leave it to Allah. I mean, just introduce, but.
Let me ask this to the sisters. What is one of the main reasons you resist going on a first date, quote unquote, or knowing this person, the first thing that comes to your mind, what's the first thing that makes you resist or gets in the way of you doing that?
Okay, I'll first go on, because I have a daughter who's working on her doctor becoming the physician.
I think most of the time, I don't expect my sister to say anything, but it's a perfection. For example, although I believe 100% in her right, or my daughter's right to go out with someone, I mean, not just two of them, I mean, but going to a coffee shop or something. But at the same time, as a mother, I'm concerned, what if someone from the community is here? What if it didn't work? Let's say it didn't work with this guy, but then he go out with someone else. And I think it's mainly the community.
Yes, so, sorry.
Yeah, reputation.
Sister Ahlam.
I was gonna say that the reputation of, say if it was me and a guy, and even if we weren't even doing anything at all, which is what we're supposed to be doing, my reputation would be teared to shreds, and his would be lost below.
So basically, it boils down to getting permission. If you're permitted, for example, if the mother says it's okay and your reputation is intact and this is halal, then you'll be more encouraged to do so.
That's actually one of the main things that does lead a lot of young people to do mistakes, because they are forced to meet in private in their car, or I don't know, hiking or somewhere where there is not a very public place, because our community is really harsh and pass
Yeah.
judgment. So people go to private when they don't really want to. They just
Yeah.
find themselves in situations.
So for parents especially, the point that I want to stress is that your children's feeling or belief about getting your respect is so important, or your permission is so important, number one. And number two, as parents, myself being a mother, as a parent, we have to be aware of our own excess luggage, of how this is going to be against my kid's reputation, or how am I going to be viewed in the community. That's your issue. Do not bring your issue to your child.
One question on reputation and community. A lot of us, I don't know, for the age group or professionals, a lot of us travel for work or are transplants to other new communities where you don't have a reputation. You can't ask people that they know about this person or that person. I know a lot of the times people ask, how do they know them or what's their thought of them. But a lot of times we have to make our own judgment. So for people that are very involved or very career oriented, how do we kind of balance the two versus, community, always thinking of community has to have a big input versus our own personal, kind of like the we part and the me part, how do you kind of balance that?
I don't mean to sound facetious here, but I seriously ask this question to almost everyone that I meet, is why is other people's opinion so important to you?
That's why I'm asking, because I
You have to answer that question to yourself. Only you can answer that question to yourself, right? Why is it somebody's, not only opinion, being liked important to you? What does it mean you not being liked or you not being accepted? What does that mean to you? And unless you find the answers to those questions, then you're going to be stuck in that conflict.
Because I hear, say, what I was saying is, a lot of times the first thing that people say is ask the community about that person or what they think, Why not turn to the person that's interacting with them the most,
Mm-hmm.
the two people, So is there
I think we have to strike a balance between the two, because sometimes public opinion is correct about someone, public perception, and sometimes it's not correct. You have to speak to that person. That person's reputation has been ruined by his ex-marriage, let's say, her ex-husband, his ex-wife, and then in public people know something, but in private it's something else. So you have to consider both. Public opinion is important, and also interaction, and knowing the people from their own selves firsthand is also important.
Let me ask you this, to all three panelists. We live in a very open society. to where a lot of our sisters and brothers don't live at home, they live at college, they live away, they have work, they work in different states, they're away from family and so forth. So, say you had mentioned like sort of like a step process. First, you know, the introduction, you see the person that you may be interested in getting to know, and you get their phone number, and you somehow make a connection, getting to know them. Then you said the following step should be to seek your parents' permission. Well, I believe like if you reach that level to ask your parents' permission, you haven't even begun to know who this person is.
I meant
But even consult.
your
But
parents.
why even bother bother the parents when I don't even know anything about you really. I haven't even sat with you. I haven't spoken with you. Let me first see if I'm
But
really interested in you before I get in.
Sometimes the community and the parents, they know that individual.
Yes.
We might not necessarily know him or her, but they know something about him or her.
Right. But let's say that the person doesn't have a negative reputation, or let's say the family is known to be, decent people and so forth. But we're talking about people who live in, other states or away at college. Because most of the time, it's not in-mosque relationships that develop. Most of it is outside. It's either with your group of friends. A lot of it is the Instagram, the Facebook, the Snapchat groups. This is how they're meeting other people, and college, university, classrooms, work environment. They're meeting their other people. So how does one go about it in a dignified, honorable, ethical, Islamic theme, getting to know that person without crossing those borders? And you don't necessarily getting the permission of the parents yet. I sense it's too premature. Now, correct me if I'm wrong.
To test the water, we ask the parents to see what they also think about this case. They might not necessarily know the individual, but the whole environment, the family, the race, the culture,
Okay, but I'm sure like a lot of times, like if a sister is interested in the guy, she'll maybe indirectly say, hey mom, what do you think of such and such a family? And right away mom's gonna respond because she has an opinion about it. But if she has no clue about the family and the girl is interested in getting to know this person, isn't it too premature to talk to your parents about that before? Because I don't know, maybe I just don't like the way he sits when I went out to
On the
dinner.
other hand, if you advance in this relationship and your parents are the last people to know, and suppose they don't give their blessings.
Well, I'm not saying to advance, but when do you begin that process? How long do you
When
go
it
into
becomes
it?
to appear to be serious.
And to what level, do you hang out? Do you go out? Do you be together?
Yeah.
Remember, you're not living in the home, or you're not.
Let me tell you something. I'm a father and a grandfather. And beside being a father and grandfather, I have a desk not far from here, which I receive divorce petitions, and I listen and I counsel people, on family crisis. We are emotional beings. We are made of a heart and emotions. And sometimes, even if you look at someone and you say, I'm not going to marry this person, after 2 weeks, you end up marrying him or her. Because you are made of emotions. This is why your parents' involvement and some of your wise friends' involvements and consultation is important. Some situation you cannot handle it yourself. You get emotionally weak, and then you compromise the principles that you set for yourself earlier. Because this is love, this is romance with the opposite gender. This is why Islam says in this case, do not rush. Because you put a male and female anywhere on earth, after interaction, after a period of time, they're going to love each other, believe me. But then, is this love good for a long-term relationship, marriage, or not? This is the question. Otherwise, it's good to hang out, to enjoy your time, to sleep together. But is it good to build a family or not? We are looking for that type of love that is good to sustain a family for a long time. That type of commitment. Otherwise, feelings Always you put a male and female in any place on earth, after a while you find them very good friends.
Good question here. Is it necessary to fall in love with the person before marriage, or love grows after marriage?
It depends on your definition of love. What do you mean by love? Each and everyone has his own or her own understanding of love. For me, I put love, it is synonymous to one word, sacrifice. For me, love, if it does not amount to sacrifice, don't call it love. Call it feeling, good feeling, friendship, this, that. This is for me. Love, which is required for the marriage, it means sacrifice. For others, it could be not sacrifice. This is why we have 80% divorce rate here in the Superior Court, because they did not understand it as sacrifice. They put themselves first. Sacrifice means when you put others before yourself.
There's some input. Would you like to have any comments about?
I'll go next.
First of all, the first thing that I just thought about is, has anyone heard of the 5 Love Languages, the book by Gary Chapman? All right, the 5 Love Languages. All right, so this is something that I would highly recommend everyone do in here. It's a great assessment. It's just good to know how you like love to be expressed towards you by your significant other. And it's not just about your significant other, it can relate to anybody else, right? So let me give you the 5 love languages. So you have physical touch, right? So some people like the holding hands, the hugging, all that good stuff. Acts of service, right? So you like love to be expressed through action, right? Third is quality time. You actually like to spend time with the person, doing things together. Fourth is receiving gifts. So you like when the person gives you gifts, you get all happy. The 5th one is words of affirmation. So you're a verbal person. You like the I love yous, the sweeties, the honeys, all that good stuff. You want to hear it, okay? So it's just good if I highly recommend you guys doing this. It's free. It's just a assessment. I think it's the number 5 lovelanguages.com to go ahead and do that. The topic was on
Love.
love.
Well, on love, but it was also how to, approach, or the ways of dating.
All right, so a lot of people that I see are more on the younger side, so they actually do talk before parents get involved. But they have boundaries, right? So they ask the important questions in the beginning, and based off that, it's a yes or no, parents are involved or not, right? They ask the important questions that would be deal breakers essentially. And then, but in terms of a time frame, I mean, I agree with what the Said saying is that you get emotionally attached really quickly. And I see this with the brothers more than the sisters, actually. The brothers get attached really fast, within weeks. So you have to...
Alhamdulillah, this is the first time I hear this.
Well, that's the first time I've heard it too.
Based on the population I work with, this is just my generalization. It doesn't have to do with every brother in this room or in general.
Well, they have a good way of hiding it then.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, it goes back to your intention as well, right? When you're asking the questions to the sister or brother via email or via third person, like if the third person is the medium, right? So you're asking to the person, you're not directly talking to the other person. Does that make sense? Right? So you have a middle person that is answering and asking questions. I've seen that way to work as well. I'm not sure if anyone's used that way in here, but it's actually worked. So yeah, I think it's about the questions you ask in the beginning, the deal breakers, and then if you want to get the family involved. At least that's what I've seen the young couples do.
For me to talk about love, it's just not a feeling or concept. It has to have 4 or 5 components. And the first one is, do you understand the other person? So for you to be able to love, do you understand that person? Do you understand their weaknesses and their strength? Do you understand their likes and dislikes? Do you honor them, meaning even with their differences, do you accept them? Do you honor them? Do you accept who they are for who they are? Or is there a nudge to change them? Do you respect each other? Meaning, do you respect each other's thoughts or even differences? And do you let yourself be influenced by your partner or by the other person ideas? Are you open to the other person's opinion or decision? So love is more than just a concept, but is being able to have all these components in it. And at the end, not only do you love that person, you'll even be a great friend to that person, and friendship is stronger, I believe, than just love.
I guess it's for the beginning of a relationship, it's really important not to mislabel your feelings, because when you're attracted to someone, it tends to be like the honeymoon phase, even if you're not like married yet. So I think a lot of time what the youth tend to do, especially with everything so overly romanticized in the media and our books and our movies and everything, we think, oh, I have feelings for this person, you know, I have butterflies, it makes me happy to talk to them, and they assume, oh, I'm in love. But that's obviously going to end up fading after a year or two, and if you don't have anything stable to build on that, and usually when you're in that phase, you tend to overlook their problematic behavior, and they'll overlook your problematic behavior. So I think it's really important that we start to move away from that, and we kind of go towards a relationship in a more like clinical and precise way, thinking, okay, these are his strengths and weaknesses, these are my strengths and weaknesses, these are his values, these are my values. Let's go from there. Obviously, let's hope you're attracted to them, but you know, the lovey-doveyness will come later on. At some point, when you live with someone, that proximity does breed that. So I think it's really important that we try to stay away from these romantic feelings that we experience and focus more on the substantial.
Any comments, sir?
I just have a question. So I know we've been talking about a lot about feelings. I've heard a saying, and I think it's more impactful now with education more readily available. Is people are falling in love with other people's knowledge or brains rather than their hearts. Have you guys had any experience with that?
Could you elaborate a little bit?
So, like
please?
for example, if two people are PhD people, like they are infatuated with each other's topics or specialties in the field, but each other's feelings or the 5 love languages are different, and they don't know how to communicate with their feelings. They tend to split apart, I see, or they just stay together because of each other's knowledge or brain, their ability to go back and forth intellectually instead of with feelings.
Have I had experience? Yes. It goes back to compatibility and having certain things in common. I have a couple who, when you look at them at every level, they love each other. But the woman's concern or complaint is that her partner does not intellectually stimulate her. So at the end of the day, they don't have much to talk about. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, that worries me, and this goes into the guys' area most of the time, is that when we are intellectualizing, when we are in our head, the more we are in our head, the less we are in our heart and emotion. And what bonds us and what foster fondness and admiration and love is emotion and not intellect. So if you're always in your head, you won't be available emotionally to your partner.
And are you saying, Doctor, that it's the emotional part that is more important than the mental connection?
It's a balance. It's a balancing act. What I'm saying is, oftentimes when you are in your head, it's a defense mechanism. You're more in your head because you don't want to feel. You don't want to feel because you're protecting yourself from certain kind of pain, and when you're defensive and when you're protecting, you are not moving forward and embracing your partner. Rather, you're pushing away and pulling. So the intellectualization can be a defense. When you are in a relationship with your partner, you want to be at the emotional level. Now, it's striking balance. You don't want to be all the time emotional because then that creates chaos, right? When, on the other hand, when it's all intellectual, it creates rigidity. There's no flexibility. Right. So you want to balance it, and you want to be in the middle and be able to be in the middle and be open when it's necessary. When you need to be rational and reasonable, intellectual in case of crisis, for example, you don't want to be emotional, okay? But when it comes to expressing feeling or on a date or the birth of your child, you want to be emotional. You want to express that. So how do you balance those two is the trick.
Correct me if I maybe you say, but I think an emotional connection is critical because that plays a part into the compromise and into the patient level and to making things, happen and to keep things intact. Mentally, I think if there isn't that emotional, heartfelt connection, maybe I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, the statistics show otherwise, that there would be a disconnection in the marriage if there wasn't that connection there.
Absolutely, that's what starts, relationship means emotional bonding, right? We talked about emotional intelligence. A guy can be a brain surgeon and be really good at what he does, but if he doesn't have that emotional intelligence, meaning how to identify, express, and be okay with emotion, he comes home and he cannot relate with the children, he cannot relate with the wife.
Yes. Let me add one more dimension to this. I differentiate between reasons to fall in love with someone and reasons to continue and sustain this love. They might be different.
Right.
So to fall in love, maybe intellectual compatibility, it's not very necessary. But down the road, when the journey is long, intellectual, spiritual, mental, financial, social compatibility is important to sustain this journey and this marriage.
Thank you. Any comments before I address these questions here? So everybody's not having difficulties dating, right? You guys, it's a clear-cut road for you guys, right?
In between parenthood and marriage, let's say if the male is bringing in sufficient income, should the spouse work, not work?
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit, touch about the role, gender, responsibilities and duties of the gender position. But let me address these questions because I don't want to sideline these comments or questions. And there's an array of different topics here, so just bear with me here. How do you know what you are looking for, either traditionalist or modernity? How does one know? Question by an audience.
Go ahead, Sara.
I don't understand the question, I'm sorry.
How do you really know whether if you're really searching for somebody who has the traditional aspect of their character, personality, as far as compared to somebody who's more of a modern, like very independent, career-minded, or career-driven, as opposed to traditional roles to where, like, we could say breadwinner, the male being predominantly the breadwinner and the female being the homemaker. So how do you know which one you really want? I think, if I'm not mistaken, whoever asked that question?
I would start by saying, what do you want? What do you know about yourself? What do you want? You cannot answer that question before you know yourself. That's how I understand that question. I could be wrong.
I think there's a struggle between wanting somebody, because now these days our sisters are, they're educated, they have their own careers, but yet men are finding it possibly a difficulty in trying to, the role is really taking a shift in what we've had in the traditional marriage thing. Because what they're facing these days is completely different than my generation or previous generations have faced. So maybe they want to both or one or the other, but how do they know what?
Is the question, how do you know between the difference between empowering and freedom?
I think I got you.
Okay.
Okay.
That's better than I am doing.
They would never be able to know exactly what they want until they experience it. Because sometimes she's very open-minded, contemporary, modern, she pursues her career, and then she finds the same person. After a period of time, she regrets. She says, I wish I found someone who's traditional, okay? Who wants me to stay at home, who wants me to take care of my kids. we would never know until we really experience. So what I suggest to those who want to get married, if you train yourself to be content, this is the golden key for success in marriage. Qana'a, content. Because whatever you do, you would never be able to find someone who's 100% to your satisfaction. You would never be able, even messengers and the prophets of God could not find someone who's 100% compatible. This one, leave it for the akhirah. There, because they can custom made. In the akhirah, you can ask God, I want a custom made husband. He can do it for you. But here, you have to be content. And content, qana'a, when you think that she's okay. Yes, she has some defects, problems, but look at her good things. Or she says about him, he's bad in this area and that area, but on the other hand, in these other areas, he's good. Content is going to bind the couples together.
Did you have any comment on that?
Okay. So, realistically, the increase of dual house incomes, I mean, if the numbers are high. So, yes, both spouses are working now. So, when you are getting to know the other person, right, you have to ask the questions. Like, would you be okay if I worked? Would you be okay if I had a kid and I worked? You know, these questions have to be in the beginning. I mean, the beginning stages when you're getting to know each other. Because if he's not cool with it, then that's not your guy. Or if she's not cool with what you want, then she's not the person you're looking for. So asking these questions from the get-go is also important in my opinion.
Preferences often change from what I see that, you know, sometimes when a man experiences his wife staying on maternity leave and sees what it means to have a homemaker, then he would want that to change. Or otherwise, sometimes a woman might say, I'm open to being a stay-home, you know, wife, and then realize, no, I'm not open to that. So it's
Right, so that's where flexibility comes in. So I think you have to be flexible with them getting to know each other too, or within the marriage, because times are changing and you gotta get with it. So if your preference changes, you have a conversation about it, like what would change?
Even you evolve, you mature, you change views. I mean, you know, I'm 50 years old. When I married at the age of 20, oh God, if I told you the things I wanted then to what I have now, whoa, you know, I mean, you change, you grow, you mature, you may even have a strong position about something at the beginning, but life teaches you something else down the road.
Absolutely.
So flexible is very important. What role, if any, does attraction, spiritual and physical, play in a marriage?
It plays a major role. I think don't get married with someone that from day one you are not attracted to him or her. It plays a major role. But the Quran has a good teaching. It says, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. After you get married, if your marriage is sincere, God is going to engender among your hearts love and compassion and attraction. Because some people, they live in a utopian world. And if you wait to find the 100% attraction, you would never get married. So, but at least some level of acceptance, you know.
And chemistry.
Or chemistry, let's put it this way. Yes, if there is chemistry, maybe not 100% attraction, then it's going to evolve. And always remember what the Bible says. The beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Did you have any?
It's. I was just gonna say it's a gatekeeper. It's what brings you or gets you into the door. Attraction is, and you also have to when it comes to attraction or other factors, you have to be able to see that you're on an equal footing. Because if one feels more handsome or beautiful, then there's a tendency. If you're not honest with yourself, there's a tendency to put down the other, or the other to feel indebted and trying to overcompensate.
If I give a tip to my sisters, if you want to know what your husband's going to look like 40 years from now, 30 years from now, look at his dad. Like what you see, that's what you're gonna end up.
And vice versa is correct.
Okay, from an Islamic view. Oh, there is? Oh, what you're gonna look like down the road? Okay, from an Islamic view, why Islam doesn't encourage us to marry divorced women? Why Islam doesn't encourage
This is a
us?
female question, probably.
Why
Yeah?
Islam doesn't
No,
encourage
it's
us
a guy's
to
question.
marry a divorced woman?
Yeah. No, Islam does encourage you to choose and select your future spouse without intimidation. This is absolutely your choice. And you must exercise this choice. Don't go with what your mother, your father, your brother goes. Go with what you select. Of course, within the boundaries of Islamic ethics. Now, for the divorce, you cannot initiate divorce unless within your marriage contract you had stipulation that I have the right also to initiate divorce if I am dissatisfied in this relationship. You have to put that as a clause in your marriage contract.
I'm glad you brought this up. I've been having a lot of discussions with many sisters about that, and there's a great hesitance in terms of the brothers who find that offensive or don't like that, and culturally it's just in their head that this is something that is very unusual and it's unacceptable. So for me, in my opinion, I think Imam should propagate that more, that the woman does have that right, because there's a misconception that she doesn't, and in a way, it's that the right is there, but for a woman, she has to ask for it, but for a man, it's just a given. So how do we change that culture?
The
Because it's
reason
not
why
something
she
that
should,
share.
it's not automatically granted, because I'm going to say something, you might not like it, the females, because females are more emotional. So as soon as they get unhappy in a marriage, this is not the norm. It could have some exceptions. Could have some exceptions. But once they are unhappy, they initiate divorce. Look at the court. Go to the Superior Court here in Orange County and look at the rate of divorce. 90% of the cases are initiated by women, 10% by men. So Islam says we have to uphold the family. Family should not disintegrate easily. You have to be patient. Even if it takes to leave your husband for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, still put the family first. So they don't grant them this right automatically, unless she asks for it. These are exceptions. And this is to secure and save and safeguard the family.
From an Islamic
That does not mean if after marriage she did not put this clause in her marriage, she has no right to get divorced. She has the right, but it is a longer process.
sometimes
It takes
it's years.
Not years, I would say it takes 6 months.
It really varies. I have friends who have gone as far as needing to go to meet Moustafa themselves and go to Iraq and
No,
5 years
that's
before they were granted
that's
that.
a weird case, but we deal with this on a daily basis, I am telling you. Takes some time to prove that he's guilty. We write a letter to him, forewarning him, then we ask him to do the divorce himself. If he declines, then we will go ahead and divorce her from her husband.
I'm sorry, I could be mistaken, but Sister Fatima, I think the question was different.
Yeah, we went into a different thing. I'm going to get on to more of the questions because I have to respect the time. But just a tip to my sisters, when you get married, make sure the...
The clause there.
They
No,
call
it's, you put the divorce right in your hand.
Yeah.
Unconditional. Say it doesn't like this.
No, this is a prenup. This is a prenup, and we encourage them to know their rights.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And to be aware, because if I mention it to them here, it is considered disrespectful. They tell me, Said, we came for a happy moment and you are reminding of something bad. I said, no, this is the law. So they have to read about it and know. And actually, when I got married, believe me, 32 years ago, I had to sign a document this thick on things that if I do, my wife has the right to divorce me.
Yeah.
32 years
But
ago.
we make it very simple, just
And
make
I
it
kept putting
unconditional.
signatures in.
Yeah, well, make it unconditional and put the divorce right in your hands. That's, I respectfully understand your comment on that, but I think just to make things easier, we're living in a completely different time and era. Let me get to the questions and come to an ending. Should I care about the guy's past if he has temporary marriage? Also, as a guy, a girl's past.
It depends. If he's a veteran in this and she's a veteran, yes, you have to care about the past. Because there was a recent study. It says the more relationship you have before marriage, the more chances for your marriage to break up. It depends on the number of the relation. It weakens your immune system. So if that person, be it male or female, a veteran, he did 500 relationships and now he wants to settle down, he would not do that, believe me. Or she would not do that. So you can answer this, no problem.
Yeah, the past becomes your present unless it's resolved. So whatever the past issue is, you need to know. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to wreck your marriage, but if you don't learn, if you don't resolve it, learn from the past, then when you are with this person, what happens is it's the past thing that is coming and projecting into your present.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Okay, so basically if the past will potentially impact your future and present, then you need to talk about it, such as health issues, such as mental health issues, such as past relationships that maybe kids are involved, things of that nature. Yes, you guys should discuss it.
Why nowadays men mostly don't like to get married or to be committed? Why do men run away from commitment and marriage, even if they've started the relationship on a serious but they seem to have to change? They seem to have a change of heart when marriage conversation comes in.
Because women are not ready to commit themselves.
I don't think that was the question.
Yeah, this is the answer. That's not the question, the answer. Why men are not ready to commit themselves? Because they find, this is what they allege, that they find that there is no commitment from the side of the females. So, كيفما تكونوا يولى عليكم. Wherever you live, in what environment you live, you are governed by that environment. If men are willing, if women are willing, then men will be willing. But unfortunately, we are raising the bar. The reason why those guys, they don't get together, the reason why, because they raise the bar. They are not realistic. They are idealistic. He looks at a wife who's perfect in every aspect. She looks at him, he has to be perfect in every aspect. And they are not going to find it.
Okay. How do you discover or resolve the issue of sexual compatibility in a Muslim context where we are not even allowed to touch hands?
You answer this.
That's a religious answer. That's a religious question.
As I said, it all depends on our intention. I think if you want to build a family and raise children, and if you meet someone, then you should look at her 20 years down the road, an honorable mother. So don't exploit her, don't touch her. Say, I will wait, because she's going to be a mother, and she wants to be the teacher of my daughter, so I have to respect these rules.
We're talking about sexual compatibility, though. I think more in context of, because in Islam, you're not supposed to have any physical touching.
What does it mean?
So,
Sexual
like, how am I going to know that
compatibility.
this person is going to be something,
Yeah, my friend.
because sex is very important
Sexual
in a marriage relationship.
compatibility, it means that you are able to perform your duties. So you can ask the person about his or her medical history. If he's impotent, let's say, then don't get involved with him. Tell him, I want a marriage with children, with a relationship, seriously. Otherwise, when we love each other, there is a true love, both become very hot, believe me. When we don't love each other, we become cold. We don't like sex. This is the reason people don't like, not because something biologically wrong with them, but because there is no connection, no chemistry.
It's also very important to ask the hard questions, because we're not allowed to have premarital sex, the best next thing that you can do is ask those hard questions, which sometimes is very difficult because of cultural, but to say, what are your likes? You know, I'm talking about sexual context here. What is
Before
your
marriage?
view?
This is before marriage?
Talking, I'm talking about talking and not
Yeah,
actually
but how
doing
can you
it.
even ask when you've never experienced it?
No, what is your view? No, I'll come. What is your view about sexuality, for example? Oftentimes, women and girls are taught that sex is something to be frowned upon. It's not that you have to have pleasure. As a woman, you cannot have pleasure, okay? So if that is instilled in a young girl from a very early age, okay, and then she's married, and the husband wants her to enjoy herself, the voice she hears is the mom saying, you're not supposed to enjoy. Okay?
I see your
You know, okay?
But there is no room for improvement after marriage?
How can you improve before you actually point the problem and discuss the problem and solve the problem?
Yeah, but the female does not have any experience. She knows nothing about sex.
She may
The
not know.
Muslim-
She may not know the physical aspect of it, but she is taught how to react and what to think and how to feel about sex. So if sex is a taboo, for example, and she is taught, as I said, not to enjoy sex, it's being or you're being a loose or pervert if you actually experience your desire and your pleasure during sex. If that's what she's taught, and the husband, on the other hand, wants his wife to enjoy and to show him pleasure, she is conflicted. She's not going to do that.
So you suggest they talk about it to find a solution, not to reject her.
Not to reject her, but
Okay.
from a get-go before marriage, to ask those very, very hard
Yeah.
questions. What is your view about sex? You know, what is your upbringing? You know, how do you go into the future? How do you anticipate? Yes, she does not know, but we're also in a world where we're taught sex ed. So we know our
Many
anatomy
of them
very
are
well.
shy. They are not going to answer this
And
question.
that's why I said it's a very difficult, like earlier we said we were just on stage 1 of dating. This does not happen on stage 1. This difficult question are not going to happen on stage 1. This is going to happen as you progressively go and you're going to the serious one. Now you're going to tackle the difficult questions.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So, basically, if you're having difficulties with intimacy, that's one of the top reasons why people get divorced. Just want to put that out there. Also, that's one of the reasons why people look for it elsewhere and addictions start occurring, such as porn addiction. So just something to keep in mind.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? I think there's a great imbalance from that's happening between the brothers in the community, especially in the Shia context, and the sisters, where there are avenues where the brothers may get into marriages or whatsoever, and then in most cases they marry sisters who might not have the same level of physical experience, not just emotional, with others, and then that creates what you're saying. Probably, I don't want to call it compatibility, but it creates that struggle. So how do we promote abstinence from your professional opinion and even in the masajid? Because I think what people miss out is they think that when they get involved, say in a short-term marriage or when they get involved in relationships, that it's the past, it was just a physical thing that happened. They don't realize the spiritual and the emotional effects that it has on them that they bring into the marriage, especially if they're marrying with a sister who doesn't have the same experience. So how do we resolve that? Because from what I know and what I've seen, that is a very, 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 how do I say, upcoming and growing issue in our community that people don't talk about.
How do you resolve the conflict between, just repeat the question for me, please.
Yeah, how do we resolve that conflict where you have people who come into the marriage with experience and others who don't, or you have people who even, and we're not talking haram experiences. We're just saying that there is that sense of I don't know if that's what.
Evan has something to say.
I think it's not
Because it has the spiritual effects that I personally don't think that the brothers really understand. And I know this is a biased opinion, but based on my interaction with like the sisters, I feel like the brothers don't realize that these previous short-term marriages or these previous relationships have a very strong emotional and spiritual effect on them that might affect their marriage in the future.
Yeah, I think like if the two couples like in love and like they willing to spend the rest of their life together, even if the guy like has that much experience as you just mentioned, he willing to take her hand and teach her everything and spend the rest of his life with. So I don't think it's like a big issue and like it's taboo, because once they are like married, we can speak about everything, and if he has the experience, he can teach her whatever he wants, and at the same time, she can also tell him like that's what I want, like like open discussions, So once they are married, I don't think there's like if they still married and they don't speak about what they need or so there's a big issue. It's not about the sexuality, it's about the marriage itself, because they are not open to each other. And I think this is the point.
Yeah, in the Islamic literature, we find text that says a husband, being a man, a male, has to be highly sensitive to his wife on the wedding night, not to try to consummate the marriage right away, to give her a session of training and acceptance and to absorb this, not to try to attack her and bring a damage, because it really that night it could determine your marriage forever. I know some people, they mishandled the etiquette, and the manners, and they did damage to their wives. So there is a lot of hadiths in this regard that you have to be highly sensitive, because you might be experienced, she's inexperienced, so it takes time to, especially for those in religious cultures where they have not met, let alone were with someone. They had not met, so they don't know even the feelings. So we should, handle this with care. Really, we should handle it with care. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay.
Yeah.
So this is once they get married. So they have to lay the foundation, and the foundation in the marriage is safety, which the woman has to feel safe to be able to tell her partner what she likes and what she doesn't like, and when do we feel safe and how do we feel safe. If we're not going to be judged by what we say, if we're not going to be criticized by what we say, and if we feel heard by our partner, then we're more likely to let our partner know what we like and what we do not like, and they're more willing to teach us. So on one hand, the partner has to make his wife feel safe to be open. On the other hand, the wife also has to make her partner feel that she understands or she's understanding. So that safe place has to occur to be able to be vulnerable and ask those difficult questions.
Thank you. Come to this question. Science has proved that losing virginity has nothing to do with having sex. There are people who are still taking it serious and see it necessary before getting married, while there are more serious things to consider in a marriage in the 21st century. Also, virginity is not something that is only for women.
Virginity is not an Islamic requirement. There's no emphasis on it. So it could be lost by intercourse, it could be lost by an accident, it could be lost by anything. Chastity, there is a focus on chastity, not the literal meaning of virginity for male or female.
Right.
Right.
But I think the issue is culturally and maybe family-wise, like that's where the problems come in, right? Like there's expectations on, I'm gonna say sisters, so I don't know, do you guys wanna share or be interactive about this? Or is not something that?
I think it's only sisters sitting here, we talk about it.
Sister, no.
I guess to just kind of repeat what the thing was is I remember one time we had this full-on hour-and-a-half long conversation about the virginity, because there is a difference between virginity and chastity, and unfortunately people focus on virginity specifically and also think chastity is involved, and there is a misunderstanding between men and women because of the outlet that men have. So I think it is really important for the brothers to distinguish the difference between virginity and chastity.
It's cultural. It's also very important for the men to ask the question, why is that important to me? Even though it's cultural, what does it symbolize and what's the significance of it? And answering that question can give you an leeway or a way into your own thinking and your own, perspective on that.
Islamically, I think what the question, I don't know if that's, no, I'm gonna ask it actually, but Islamically, is a woman mandated to disclose, for example, to a guy if, that whether or not she had been in previous relationships, whether they're halal or not. And the other thing that I notice is
No,
few,
no, it's not required.
it's not required.
No,
Because
it's not.
A few contracts, marriage
No.
contracts that have
This
been,
is in a
they recite
pact.
it in the sigha of the aqd, so I don't know if that's an extra that the sheikhs add, because I know some sheikhs say it and some sheikhs don't.
What
When
they,
they describe a girl, they would say her name and they would say that al-baqir, blah, blah, blah. Or sometimes they don't. So I just want to know if it's something that,
the literal legal definition of virginity or bakir is that not the one who lost it in let's say in an accident or something like that, the one who had previous marriage or not. This is how we define it, whether she's bakir. So if she's virgin, it means she had no previous marriage or consummation of marriage. Because sometimes she can have marriage, but they did not consummate the marriage. So she's still bakir, considered virgin, okay? So consummation of marriage through intercourse. If she doesn't have that, she's bakir. So sometimes she's not virgin, but she's still bakir. You know what I mean? Because she didn't have marriage.
What if, so for those who say
Or-
have
or-
halal relationships or who convert to
Not
Islam,
halal,
they-
rape, let's say rape, okay? Someone was raped and she lost her virginity. But Islamically, she is considered bakir because she didn't marry. So it's the consummation of marriage which is considered, not any other incident.
And
Yeah.
is it mandatory to have that in the sleeve?
No, you don't
Because some
have,
sheikhs do it.
neither, and let me say something to the sisters. You are not morally or religiously obligated to disclose your past history to your husband. And it's better not to tell him anything, none of his business. You are establishing, he takes you as you are. Now, tell him, come and get to know me very well. You don't have to know everything about my past, my present. So, and you two don't go and ask him about his past, because always the past is problematic, really. It's a recipe for a disaster. So forget about the past.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. There's always a debate about whether people can change or not. What is the professional opinion? If someone, for example, if someone is abusive and wants to change, how do they go about it? How can the partner help?
Go ahead.
Is change possible? Yes. Okay, so that the question was change possible?
Mhm.
Yes, change is possible. Oftentimes, it's difficult to do it by yourself. That's where the professional comes in and help you.
You see that because you specialize in abusive
Yeah.
relations as well.
Yeah.
So if you know, like your partner is physically abusive, and you say that there is hope to change that person,
Yeah.
or like let's say somebody is an alcoholic, or let's say somebody is a gambler, or somebody who's a womanizer. I'm saying all this about you guys. Don't go to the sisters. But I mean, those are very serious things. And you're saying, because sometimes, I hate to say this, but I sense sometimes people have an innate disposition, an inherited genetic, that is really, I hate to say it, out of their control, not difficult. So let's hear about that because that's your expertise there.
Yes, yes. So you brought a good point about genetics and predisposition. So we may, though, be predisposed genetically. It's the gene expression that matters. It's how you express it. So what influences personality, what influences that gene expression is going to be your experience. If your experience is traumatic, okay, and you were predisposed to being temperamental, aggressive, okay, and you're in an environment where it encourages that, then your expression is going to be one of traumatic, right? So that's where learning different skills is going to come in, right? So even though you may be predisposed, and even though you might be in an experience where it's traumatic, you are able to change your gene expression. In other words, you're able to change your brain, because environment influences brain. And that's called neuroplasticity. So if you change the experience, if you teach one how to handle anger without being aggressive, even though what they learned in the past was the only way to solve problem is aggression, the new experience can change your brain and how your brain works, therefore how it's genetically expressed.
Thank you, Maryam.
Okay. So majority of studies have shown that behavior is all learned. So that means it can be unlearned in a more healthy, positive way. So yes, there's hope for people that they may be abusers or whatnot, because they can learn healthy ways of coping with whatever they're dealing with, whether it's anger, whatever issues they have. So just to think about that. I have another thing, but I lost my train of thought.
Sorry to hear that. Let's wind down. 2 more questions from the audience, and we're going to wrap it up.
I was just gonna say, although change is possible, it's always important to keep in mind, like, while you might try to help change someone or change yourself, but if things consistently remain that way, it may not change. So you have to bear that in mind and not be fooled by your own hope.
And that's what I wanted to say is, the only way that I've seen change work is if the person does it for themselves, not for another person. So they have to want to change. And from my experience working in the mental health field, when I basically, what you see is what you get in terms of a spouse. Don't think you're going to change the other person. If they change, they will change for themselves. Hopefully they've changed for God first, number one, and then for themselves. And then it's going to impact, it's going to be like a domino effect for every part of their life. So at least from my experience, that's what I've seen.
It's also very important, and this has been documented in many research, for change to happen, it has to be experiential. You just cannot read it or just go to workshops and then things change. It has to change from the intellectual sphere to the emotional sphere. There needs to be this emotional shift, experiential shift for change to happen.
Last comment or questions from the audience we take? If not, then we go real quick.
Really quick. What are the pros and cons for having, say, a Muslim or a professional or a non-Muslim therapist? Or whether one who's from your culture, a Muslim from your culture, or a Muslim that's not from your culture? How do you choose a therapist? I guess like that.
Should they have some kind of knowledge or be a Muslim themselves that knows the faith or knows the traditions of our ways, or that's not a criteria?
Well, we're trained to be culturally sensitive. Okay, does it help? Yeah. Is it mandatory? No. I don't have to be, say, for example, been through a traumatic experience myself in order to help a torture survivor.
One thing I do ask Muslim clients that come in is if they like to incorporate Islam in therapy.
Yeah.
It's up to them, because some Muslims, they don't want anything to do with Islam in therapy. They just want to work on their issues and go. So it's dependent on the person and their comfort level. They may not want to see a Muslim. They may not want to, they don't want to see, they want a totally objective, non-Muslim perspective. So it depends on the person.
Is there a disadvantage of going to a counselor that's very similar to your background?
Similar background?
Yeah.
The con is that there's a misconception that we're gonna go tell people in the same community, right? But legally,
They're gossiping.
yes.
I'm just kidding. They don't gossip about
No. Legally we are bound to not disclose any information except if the client discloses that they are suicidal, they have suicide ideation, or if they want to harm someone else, or if there's any kind of child abuse going on in the home. Other than that, everything stays.
Or
But
a
it's
suicide
not
bomber,
like-
suicide bomber, we have to disclose that.
Islamically though, isn't there an obligation to disclose in cases of marriage? Maybe for Sayyid.
Yeah, if, let's say they come to me to solemnize their marriage, let's say, and I know that he was hiding something from her, something that is going to affect their marital life, then we have to disclose this. Yeah. No
Basi-
cheating in the intentions.
It's
Yeah.
basically on your comfort level. It's like, for example, a rape survivor might not want to see a male therapist. So,
Yeah. The brother had the question, and you promised him to accommodate it. About financial, if she works
The
or
gender
something.
roles, yeah, that's a very important topic, but unfortunately, say now, we're at 5:15, we should have ended at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
That's a very important thing, we didn't get to it, I apologize for that, but maybe that is something that you could discuss on a personal, individual level with your panels or future sessions. Just to wrap it up, please, we've got 3 professionals up here, so if you need professional help, we've got business cards here, and you can always set appointments to see the Sayyid. They want a question here, they asked about like, how do you meet? Like, I mean, why doesn't the center provide venues for young couples to meet? Well, we do, worked in all these years, okay? So we do every other Friday night. Get on the youth email group email addressing. If you give them to either Brother Khalid or Sister Rabab or Sister Shuru, look at your email list on there and you'll be in, right. Or they can go to the website. Yeah, go to the website and subscribe to the newsletter, and right away you get info about what's happening with the youth. And one of the successful things that we do every year is we do camping. And that's a really great way of meeting lots of young professional sisters and brothers. And they want to take a group picture, so don't go away. Let's all gather here. I want to thank each and every one of our panelists for your time and sharing with us your insight, professional input, religious input. We really appreciate your comments and your advice. Thank you very much. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward each and every one of you.
And
Thank
I,
you.
in turn, thank Dr. Sara.
Thank
May Allah bless you, and Sister
Not Layla.
Maryam, not Layla, for being here with us today. We are honored to have you. Inshallah, we look forward to
Inshallah.
seeing you in the future. And thank you for your patience. The
Yes.
audience, may
Thank you.
Allah bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.